The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It is Thursday, July 24th, 2025, and we're live with Financial Rebellion. Good morning, Catherine. Good morning, Carolyn.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, now this show is called, it was about the Genius Act and stablecoins, of which I do not know what either is. So please, could you treat this, I am the average dummy when it comes to this kind of thing. So if you can just explain really clearly what it is and why I should care, I'd be very grateful.
So the Genius Act is a bill that Congress just passed and the president signed into law, which sets up a regulatory structure for the issuance of stable coins in size, and does it sets it up so that the U.S. Is clear it's planning on doing everything it can to get its stablecoins adopted worldwide. And you should care because there is no provisions in this bill to stop stablecoins from being programmable. So this is CBDC this is a private version of a CBDC that can be programmed. And if it's programmed with the social credit system and the kind of data analytics that the administration has been working to build, then you're talking about complete control through the financial transaction system, which means essentially the people, for example, who are keeping the Epstein files secret can turn off your money if you don't do with your children or they can't do with your children what they want to.
So, but why? Okay, so Trump signed this in. Why would he think this is a good idea?
Because it delivers total control to the control grid. That's
well, it also means for every stable coin that's issued, there's got to be an equal amount of treasury securities or other very liquid assets. And that means that anybody who's doing transactions in stable coins and issuing them is going to be buying treasury securities.
Well,
so there's not a big demand otherwise.
Well, but what Carolyn is describing is the way the U.S. intends to use stablecoin is to dramatically improve the adoption of the dollar market share and the sale of treasury bills globally. So they are looking to preserve the dollar as the global reserve currency and deepen the market for treasury securities. So they expect it to rejuvenate the dollar system. But the reality is it will do it in the way that then institutes the control grid, not just in America, but in any market around the world where they can get stable coins adopted. So let's go to the news and then come back and we'll go through the detail of what the U.S. is saying it's going to do, because what we want to focus on is how is this going to be used and then what does it mean to you?
Okay, let's go to the news. Sorry, I did forget the news. I apologize. Let's start off with the news. All right, so defining moment in human history, US rejects World Health Organization's international health regulation amendments. Catherine, I'm sure you've got something to say about this.
Yeah, so my understanding, so we have informed the WHO that we are dropping as a member and we haven't paid our dues. Now, my understanding is you can't drop without a 1-year notification and your dues being current. So it's not clear to me where we are on the membership tract. But the IHR amendments had been proposed, they've been weakened. And essentially what they did was they gave enormous central control to the WHO and the people behind the WHO to declare all sorts of central controls. They say for health, I say for economic power and control. So this was a real mechanism being put in place to centralize political control. And so the US has rejected it. Other countries have rejected it too, Israel and Italy. Are there any more countries that we know of that have also rejected the amendments?
I haven't.
I don't know.
Right.
But it's 2026 that we're out of it completely. Is that right?
It should be 2026 when we're out of it completely. I would like to point out that one of the reasons we have achieved this as a country is very much thanks to a small group of people led by Meryl Nass. There was a group of people internationally in Europe and the United States who fought this very hard and were able to educate people about how these were not health protocols. These were very dangerous political controls that could have been used to destroy national sovereignty around the world. Yeah. So this is very, very good news, and we're very thankful that Kennedy did this and the administration did this. But we're not out yet.
Right. That's important.
Right.
Other news. Okay, what to know about the 3 crypto regulation bills in Congress? Yes, tell us, please. What do we need?
So there have been 3 crypto or 3 bills going through Congress. The Genius Act started in the Senate and went to the House and went back to the Senate and has been passed and signed by the president. The Clarity and the Genius Act oversees stablecoins, and our term of the day is about stablecoins, and we'll describe stablecoins in more detail in a second. The Clarity Act is meant to create a regulatory framework for all crypto other than stablecoin that had gone through the House and was headed to the Senate. The Senate has just published a discussion draft, but the Senate recesses on July 31st, and the House just recessed in a surprise recess that we'll talk about in a minute. So the Clarity Act probably won't pass this year, although the president wanted them both. And then there's also a CBDC Anti-Surveillance State Act. We are in a very dangerous situation where the Genius Act has no provisions to stop the money from being programmable or tied with a digital ID and a social credit system. And so we are talking about really wiping out financial transaction freedom potentially. And so some members of Congress are trying to do something about that with the anti-CBDC bill.
Right. Do we have any more news, Lou, or is that it? Okay.
So I would like just to bring up the Epstein. Yeah. So I do want to describe what happened because the House just recessed early. The House declared, Mike Johnson declared a recess, and the reason he declared a recess was that Thomas Massie, and this is a tweet from Congressman Massie, had gotten 20 co-sponsors for a bill requiring the Epstein files to be released. And his co-sponsors were basically giving interviews and saying they had the votes to force the release of the Epstein files, certainly the ones that Congress has. Johnson, the Speaker of the House from Louisiana, literally recessed early to prevent that vote from happening, which literally means, so here's the tweet from Congressman Massie. Let bring it up again, Lou, so I can just read it. Speaker Johnson, why are you running cover for an underage sex trafficking ring and pretending this is a partisan issue? MAGA voted for this. So we are watching an extraordinary, literally the Congress or the House being given 41 paid vacation days for the privilege of protecting pedophiles. It's extraordinary. And, you know, if we keep talking about the red button problem, but here the red button problem is rising to the surface in a volcanic way. And this is not unrelated to stablecoins, because if stablecoins are implemented and are programmable, then we are talking about the people who ran the Epstein network having complete control of our financial transactions. And with that will come complete control of all the policies that relate to our children, you know, including the ability to physically take them. And if we don't do what they say, they turn off our money. So you're talking about the battle for central control is coming to a head, and it's coming to a head through the food, through the health, and through the money. And it's really one issue, and that is, are we going to preserve the Constitution, or is the financial coup going to literally deliver us into a digital concentration camp?
It's great, all of it. That Massey tweet is a good tweet. It's a very good question. Why are they doing this?
So here's the interesting thing, but this will show you why people are going along. Congressman Massey voted against the big, beautiful bill, and Trump targeted him and basically said, if we've had it with you, they started a PAC to target him in his district. So he has a district, the last time he was voted in, he got 39,000 votes. It's not a heavily populated district. And so Trump targeted him. Massey went out in response and asked to raise money, and people literally poured money in. Trump said he was going to spend $1 billion to get him out. In the last election, AIPAC spent, I think, $450,000 to get him out, somewhere around there, and wasn't able to make a dent. So now Massey came out and said with the money he'd raised plus the money he already had, he's got $1.7 million. But you literally are watching the president of the United States and one congressman from Kentucky, go into a battle royale. So this is, and most Congress people are not willing to do this. They're not willing to stand up in this way. And it shows you what it takes to try and do the right thing on these issues. And, Massey stood up on the vaccinations. He stood up on the Epstein files. He stood up on the budget. He stood up again and again. And, but he's demonstrating what it takes and how dangerous it is to stand up under these circumstances. I would point out he was Hero of the Year on the Solari Report. We have a very good detailed write-up about all good things Massey.
That's fantastic. Should we go to the term of the day so we can understand stablecoin?
Yes, the term of the day is payment stablecoin, which is a term that's defined in the Genius Act, and it basically means if you have a payment stablecoin, it's regulated under the Genius Act. But let's go to stablecoin, which an entry from Wikipedia. It's a type of cryptocurrency where the value of the digital asset is supposed to be pegged to the collateralized by a reference asset. And I would say that reference asset under the Genius Act is Treasury securities, repos, very, very, very liquid assets. And when they say it's pegged, it means there's a reserve account that has as exactly the same value in the collateral as the stable coin it holds. So a crypto asset is, well, it's a digital asset. And a digital asset, your bank account, when you get a statement, what you have in the bank listed on an account is a digital asset. So it's not anything, a token is just a representation of that asset on a ledger. So basically the purpose of the stable coin is to allow a transaction between two parties that convert in and out of dollars, at least on one side. And if it's someone in another country using a different currency, they're converting their currency essentially into dollars by having a stable coin. So, and a payment stable coin under the Genius Act is defined as a digital asset, what I just described, a digital asset that's designed to be used as a means of payment or settlement that the issuer is obligated to convert, redeem, or repurchase for a fixed monetary value. That's that collateral value, that's the listed value, and that the issuer represents will maintain or creates the reasonable expectation it'll maintain a stable value. You get a stable value because you've got collateral that's exactly equal to the amount of the stated value of the stable coin. So the idea is that you're spending it like cash. or like
So let me try this
bank
again
account.
and see if I can make it more simple. So let's say you have a bank account and I have a bank account and I want to send you $10. Okay. So I can send you $10 from my bank account to your bank account by a variety of mechanisms, right?
Like a wire.
Right. Like a wire, like an ACH transfer. I can mail you a check and you can transfer it that way. So this basically sets up a parallel system where I can create a stable coin worth $10 and that $10 is collateralized by $10 that's sitting in my bank, and I can send you a stable coin worth $10 and you will have a stable coin instead of the $10 in your bank account. You will also have a stable coin worth $10, but that you know will be fully collateralized in the same banking system. Okay. Now the question is, why in the world would you want to make things more complicated? Why not just keep transacting back and forth between your bank accounts, right? Part of it was to create a payment mechanism that could operate in the cryptocurrency area. Another one was to basically move out of the existing banking system and set up a system with distributed ledgers, which are public databases that allow this sort of trading to be more public in availability. And the other thing was to set up a way of transferring internationally that would be less expensive. So when my company sends a wire from our US company to the company in Europe, the wire transaction fees are expensive relative to what we could do if we did stable coins. So there's a variety of reasons to use stable coins, in terms of functionality. But let's talk about the politics of stable coins and how the US has said that it's going to use stable coins. So we have a video that I'd like to show, and it's the Kyle Samani says stablecoins represent what it's likely to be the single largest arbitrage in human history. Let's play that if we can, and then
Speaking of stablecoins and the ability to use them for payments, what's your take there?
Yeah, look, I think if you go, there's 8 billion people on the planet. If you could go to each of those 8 billion people and ask them, hey, you can denominate your wealth in any asset, gold, Apple stock, S&P 500, euros, yen, whatever you want. My suspicion is if you went and asked everyone in the world and they could answer the question without fear of political persecution, I suspect 5 to 7 billion of them would say US dollars. And so it's probably the single largest arbitrage ever in human history is to just get those people what they want. If you think that's what they want, then give it to them. And crypto rails are going to be the mechanism by which you do so. And so I think there's a massive opportunity to get stablecoins in the hands of billions of people.
Okay, so let me explain what this looks like. The U.S. Is leading the management of the dollar reserve system globally. And there's been real pressure by the BRIC nations to move trade and their reserves away from the dollar. So the dollar's under pressure. Now, the new administration is facing massive rollovers in treasuries. We've got $36 trillion of debt, and we have a lot of that debt maturing over the next 2 years because the Treasury securities for the Treasury secretaries for the last, say 4 or 5 terms have been using very short-term debt to finance the government. So we have $36 trillion. We have many trillions of dollars that need to be rolled over. And the question is, who's going to buy these treasuries? So the U.S. is interested in expanding the dollar market share globally, so more people use the dollar. But they're also interested in selling more treasury securities, and stable coins satisfy those 2 needs. So they are planning on making stable coins available through the mobile payment systems globally in a way that will shift people out of their local currency into dollars. So remember the Iraqi pallets of cash that they would send to Iraq, and they got everybody off the dinar and onto the dollar during the middle, when we went into Iraq. Think of this as the Iraqi pallets of cash. So what you're hoping to do is you're hoping to make the stablecoins, dollar-based stablecoins, available through the mobile payment systems, to countries that are on a non-dollar currency, and encourage the people in that country to get off the local currency and get onto crypto using dollars. And that flows lots of money around the world out of local currencies in hundreds of countries around the world and into the dollar in a way that finances Treasury securities, because when they buy stable coins under the Genius Act, you are required to put that money, it's supposed to be collateralized by either very high quality bank deposits or Treasury bills. And the expectation is this will put tremendous amounts of money pouring into the Treasury market and give new life both to the dollar and to the Treasury market. Now, before I go on, any questions, Polly?
No, I need to listen very carefully and educate myself. Keep going.
Okay.
I have a question. Would you envision that you might have a bank statement that would show that you have stable coins? Because the distributive ledger is out there public, but not in an account that you would have with a bank.
Right. So let's talk about who is going to be the issuer. Okay. And remember, this is all supposed to be a great alternative to CBDC. But what I will tell you is, depending on how it's done, it's likely something worse than CBDC. But if we were to issue a central bank digital currency in the United States, presumably it would be the New York Fed, or the Fed using the New York Fed, that would issue the central bank digital currency. Now, what is the New York Fed? The New York Fed is a private bank owned by its members. What we anticipate is the members who own the New York Fed, instead of the New York Fed issuing the CBDC, the banks that own the New York Fed will set up subsidiaries and issue stable coins through these subsidiaries. So, I always say, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. But essentially, the Genius Act is set up so that depository institutions in the United States, both bank and credit unions, both federally regulated and state regulated, can issue stable coins. They have to go through a regulatory process and be approved. Now, we can discuss what's in the law. The Treasury has to issue regulations that will specify more details on exactly how that approval and regulatory process works. But needless to say, every bank and credit union in the country can create subsidiaries and start issuing stablecoins if they choose to do it, and assuming that they adopt the protocols and requirements that the Treasury sets down in its regulation. And so you're literally having your existing banking system create a parallel system that's all stablecoins. Interestingly enough, although those stablecoins will be fully collateralized, they won't be insured by FDIC. And if I read this correctly, they won't be considered part of the balance sheet of the bank. The bank is a custodian. These are not deposits on their balance sheet. Does that answer your question, Carolyn?
Well, the question is, if your bank is a stablecoin issuer and you enter into a transaction with the stablecoins issued by that bank, is it going to get on your monthly statement?
So do you have a separate stablecoin statement? These are all questions I think the banks are trying to figure out. We've read lots of reports of banks trying to figure out what they want to do and how they want to do it. And they were all waiting for the Genius Act to decide. And I'm sure they're going to wait for the regulations to decide. I'm sure they're going to jump in and have something to do. Now, let's go back again. There's absolutely no... If you look at the laws that relate to a stablecoin operation by any depository institution, they are under all the same know your customer, money laundering, know your, if you look at the Bank Secrecy Act and all the other money laundering and control acts, they are completely under the control of the federal government with respect to stablecoins, which means if the federal government decides, or the banks decide, to apply social credit systems, there's nothing in the Genius Act to stop these from being programmable in the same way that CBDCs were. So Now, what's different is the issuing is not centralized, it's dispersed. But if you look at the control mechanism of a social credit system, and we know the federal government is doing remarkable things to pull together all the data they need to do a social credit system controlled by private corporations, tech companies, essentially. You know, we're looking at something that could turn into CBDCs without the protections under the law, because if a CBDC is done by the central bank, then it's under the governance of Congress. This is going to have more steps removed than this is not going to have those private banks have less responsibilities to Congress than the Fed does. Now, here's what's interesting. If you look at the CBDC system that was proposed by the Bank of International Settlements and that they've been running the regulatory process on worldwide, the difference is in the BIS system, every nation has its own CBDC. In this system, essentially the banks that own the Federal Reserve are putting out a U.S. system that, if it succeeds, will put the U.S. entirely in regulatory leadership, financial leadership of any country that comes into the system, which I'm assuming will be probably every country in the world other than the countries that have the hardware and software technological capability to keep U.S. stablecoins out, which is probably China and Russia. So in theory, in a year or two, we could wake up and find out that the U.S., if this succeeds, has 6.5 billion citizens on their digital programmable money. And the question then is going to be, how are those sovereign nations going to run taxation systems if the U.S. is running their money?
Catherine, we have a couple of viewer questions.
So what happens to stablecoins if the powers go down? Excellent question. System shuts down, won't work. You better have cash. This is why even the Scandinavian central banks are saying we better preserve cash. So we come back to our old friend, you better preserve cash. Because of the distributed ledgers and the way the system is run, this system is a huge energy and water hog and hugely environmentally damaging. So we are talking about something which, if you look at all the different discussions on the need for data servicing and energy usage, throughout Europe and the United States for data servicing and how much energy we need and how much water, just realize the very driver behind all of that is so you can have centrally controlled money and programmable money. And that is what is causing this huge energy explosion.
Is it going to be one of those things where if you opt out of stable coins or whatever, you're not going to be able to book a flight or something like that? Is it going to get to the point where they're going to tie you up and say you need stable coins or you can't survive?
No one knows. Now, I'm assuming because of the, okay, so Lou, let's just bring up the control grid. What we've been doing at Solari is, we've been doing a series of things to track what we call the financial coup and the effort to build the control grid. But we have a collection where we keep a checklist of all the different things the Trump administration is doing to bring together a digital control grid. And the answer to your question, Polly, is there are other things that need to be done to institute that kind of control. So we are watching an effort by the administration to provide tremendous amounts of resources and to transfer data to private companies in a way that will allow a real social credit system to go into place. And anyway, so you can track this. The other thing I want to point out is, Carolyn knows I have a tendency to recommend really bad movies to help you understand what's going on in this world. I'm about to do it again. Don't blame me. This is not good entertainment. But one of our recent movies was G20. If you could pull up our our movie of the week. So, Polly, I don't know if you've seen the trailer for this. This is a new movie in which Viola Davis plays the president of the United States. And she has a plan to flood the world with stable coins and to add to stablecoins, something which I do believe they're going to do, which is very liberal farm credit to get farmers all around the world, the ability to borrow money with dollars in stablecoins. So one of the ways you get everybody to adopt stablecoins is you offer them low cost, cheap loans, liberal lending terms. And of course, that's how you get every citizen in the world who's not in a dollar debt trap into the debt trap. I mean, it's like tendering for the citizens. Anyway, but Viola Davis goes to the G20 meeting in South Africa, and I would point out in November the G20 meeting is in South Africa, and she goes to the meeting with this vision of bringing stable coins to the world and cheap credit to farmers all over the world using the U.S. dollar, which of course gets them all needing dollars and having to earn dollars, et cetera, gets them in the dollar debt trap. And there is a fight with a group of terrorists who are pumping a different crypto than dollar stablecoins. Naturally, the president wins the day, and all the G20 leaders gather and agree to this wonderful plan to flood the world with dollar stablecoins. Anyway, but you can get a sense of what the hope of the dollar system is to reinvigorate the dollar system with stablecoins.
It's so
now there could be a non-dollar stable coin too.
Yeah, the euro could do a stable coin. The Chinese, we see very significant discussion in China on how are they going to deal with this. How are you going to block the mobile payment systems? How are you going to keep this off your platforms? How are you going to regulate it? And when you read the Genius Act, and again, we haven't seen what Treasury's coming out with in terms of regulation, but when you read the Genius Act, it is designed to assert absolute control over any foreign issuers of stablecoins. So now remember, we have watched a program where if countries don't do what America wants, they sanction them. We're talking about putting money out where literally the United States can sanction 6.5 billion people, one person at a time, if it works, including you and me.
So, Catherine, just so we can get a nice short social media clip from you, if someone came up to you and said, I don't care, Catherine, I think it's a good idea, what would you say back? I'm just anticipating.
Here's what I would say. I want you to bring up my tweet to Secretary Bessent. Can you bring that up, Lou? So this is what the Secretary of the Treasury gave an interview talking about how exciting and wonderful the system is going to be. So here's what I tweeted back. Why, Mr. Secretary, are there no financial freedom protections against programmable money in your stablecoins in the Genius Act? Are you trying to create a global financial kill box for every person on the planet? Could these systems be managed by social credit systems with Palantir-type data analytic systems? Would this provide individualized, integrated enforcement ranging from financial sanctions and financial kills to actual individual manhunt drone kills? And who would control this extraordinary control system? So let's go back. If you look at the people who are building the manhunt systems that we saw take out 11 top leaders in Iran last month, it's the same companies that are collecting all the data in the US systems, our healthcare data, our immigration data, our payment data, our Social Security data, our IRS data. So I want to show you a couple. So Palantir has been the lead on building the data systems that would be used or could be used or are the kind that are needed for a social credit system. Let me show you a few videos on this. So if we could just play those, I put in several Palantir systems. Let's just play those both of those videos, Lou.
Here's co-founder Peter Thiel in 2010 at Libertopia, a libertarian conference, speaking about tech companies and government.
The basic idea was that we could never win an election on on getting certain things because we were in such a small minority. But maybe you could actually unilaterally change the world without having to constantly convince people and beg people and plead with people who are never going to agree with you through technological means. And this is where I think technology is this incredible alternative to politics.
And here's Alex Karp in 2009 on civil liberties with regards to Palantir's work.
The central question, in my view, of civil liberties is how, it's not if the government has data, because let's assume the government has as much data as a health insurance company. It's how is that data being used? Is it being used in a way that's lawful? Meaning, do they have the right to use it? And is it being migrated into places it's not allowed to be used? We allow the enforcement of rules that the government ought to enforce. And by the way, my experience is they want to enforce, or at very least know they need to enforce. And if it's framed in that way, then you can have what is the ultimate Silicon Valley solution.
Turning to government, we continue to advance our mission of becoming the U.S. government's central operating system as we extend our footprint across defense, healthcare, and civilian agencies.
The government's operating system. They want everything to funnel through Palantir. By 2013, 10 years after their founding, Palantir's client list included the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the Marines, the Air Force, Special Operations Command, and more.
Did your company help to track and kill Osama bin Laden?
You know, we can never. I'll tell you, the closest thing to an answer is there are when you look at when you open the paper and look in the news about these kind of things, there's a 2/3 chance, depending on the country involved, that somehow my company was involved.
Here he spoke at the Reagan Presidential Foundation in December of 2020.
Let me just say something before we go on. So when the operating officer says we want to be the operating system, what you're talking about is moving sovereignty. So a government has financial sovereignty and it has information sovereignty. If you move all the data and money into private hands, it's lost its information sovereignty. So we're talking about privatizing the information sovereignty, creating everything you need for a social credit system. And then the question is who and what controls it? And that is a very big question. Okay, so let's go on to the next video.
Here he spoke at the Reagan Presidential Foundation in December of 2024 and shared some of his philosophy about how the West needs to maintain dominance.
Americans are the most loving, God-fearing, fair, least discriminatory people on the planet. And they want to know that if you're waking up and thinking about harming American citizens, or if American citizens are taken hostage and kept in dungeons, or if you're a foreign power sending fentanyl to poison our people, something really bad is going to happen to you and your friends and your cousins and your bank account and your mistress and whoever was involved. And, you know, when Americans are spending $1 trillion on defense, what I want and what I think my peers want is, why are these people keeping our citizens hostage, torturing our people, attacking our allies, maligning us in what was once called the United Nations, basically a discriminatory institution against anything good? We need to stand up, and those people need to be scared. And that's why this conference is so important, because we have the best products in the world, and we cannot have parity. Our adversaries do not have our moral compunction.
So this is Karp, the CEO of Palantir, and what he's talking about is how do you use technology to give our national defense an edge? And what is happening now, and this is a result of new technology, what we're seeing is what we saw in Iran, which was the first strike was not against a city or a military installation. It was to assassinate 11 of the top military leaders and scientists who were involved in the negotiation with President Trump. And the president, you know, bragging about the fact that in essence, they had been, you know, tricked by this process to essentially exposing themselves. But what they made clear was they reserved the right to assassinate in people's home with their families in a way that kills neighbors. So there is a kill zone around each leader where it is considered acceptable. So this is the kind of technology we now have. Now let's show the next video and show what the big question is here. So if you could play that, Lou.
So what do you think about the use of artificial intelligence, or lavender, by the IDF in identifying Hamas targets?
Look, I'm not, without going into all the I'm not on top of all the details of what's going on in Israel, because my bias is to defer to Israel. It's not for us to second guess everything, and I believe that broadly the IDF gets to decide what it wants to do, and that they're broadly in the right, and that's sort of the perspective I come back to. And if I fall into the trap of arguing you on every detailed point, I would actually be conceding the broader issue that the Middle East should be micromanaged from Cambridge, and I think that's just simply absurd.
The Economist wrote an article about the lavender system, which was built with the help of Palantir, is my understanding. And what it said was that in the genocide in Gaza, one of the ways the system was being applied was because no military officer chose the targets, they were not legally liable if the target was turned out to be a war crime. And so what we're talking about is creating digital systems that literally change the liabilities and the nature of war itself. And if you combine them with these data systems for both financial transaction control as well as physical control, and you have those systems run with government money but controlled by private parties, the question is, who decides? Who decides to get financially killed or physically killed, and on what basis? So we're talking about a dramatic change in how our governance and management systems work that is exceptionally dangerous, because there's no, that we know of, I don't see where the oversight is. It's one thing if these systems are being deployed for essentially national security purposes. It's another thing if they're deployed to just kill people, take their land, take their water, and plunder. So that's a question. With the privatization of these systems, will they be subject to the Constitution and proper governance? The current government is not. So understand, when you look at the control grid from the financial all the way through to the physical, we're talking literally about building a digital concentration camp.
Which you've been talking about for years.
Yes. But now we're seeing it implemented, and implementing stablecoins in a way that they can be programmed and managed privately. That's what this administration has done. They've said no CBDCs. We're going to do money that can be programmed privately, and we're going to fund private corporations organizing and collecting all the data, even privatizing the data if the data was transferred, as has been described on Doge. We're talking about private players on an unaccountable basis with our money, taxpayers' money, engaged in a system that literally is you are putting into place all the components that can build a digital concentration camp. We're talking about a coup. And if you look at what Congress is saying and what the Secretary of Treasury is saying is, this coup will be good for you because we can do a global coup and that will revitalize the dollar. And so we can keep on spending in the way that we're spending now. We can keep the fiscal game going. And, if they are successful, it can certainly rejuvenate the dollar in a way that many people have not expected can happen. Now, it's going to dramatically shift geopolitics globally. There are some people who believe that the stablecoin is the 21st century version of a war bond, because it will flow enough money into Treasury securities to keep the wars in the Middle East and Ukraine going, as well as war with China. So, they see this as giving the U.S. the power it needs to continue to do everything they can to, to stay in the Ukraine and implode Russia. So what I will tell you is the situation is exceptionally fluid, and I don't think anybody knows what is going to happen.
Carolyn, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, if you listen to those clips, they're talking about how to get around democratic principles and requirements. They're talking about putting something into a system of codes that makes decisions automatically without input from the people, and basically imposing a technocracy. And it's been suggested in some quarters, and I think even proposed laws, proposed, not passed, to do things like putting deeds on a distributive ledger. And if you are tokenizing all sorts of different assets and putting them on that distributive ledger, that's something with programmability that can be seized. So, if the deed to your property is on a distributive ledger, there can be some outside force that transfers it without you having anything to do with it.
So let me bring this back. I just finished reading, Alex Karp is the CEO of Palantir, and I just finished reading his new book. It's called The Technological Republic: Hard Power, Soft Belief in the Future of the West. And he wrote it, it's co-authored by his general counsel. And in it, he makes a plea that all of these systems should be used to ensure that the Western world's national security is superior. And the challenge of that argument is, okay, who controls that capacity? And how does that capacity relate to the individuals in the West and their property and their family, et cetera? And this brings us back to the Epstein files. The people who control the Epstein file control the US government. And I don't think there's anybody watching what's happening with the Epstein files who believes that the people's representatives are in control and are fighting for what we want. If you look at the polls, 79, 80% of all Americans, and it's very bipartisan, want the Epstein files made public. And yet, once again, they're not. And this has been happening for years, where 80% of the American people don't, or 100% don't want bailouts. And yet $24 trillion, according to the TARP Inspector General, goes out in bailouts. 21 trillion missing from the federal government. So it's one thing if the federal government is being operated in accordance with the law, but it's not. It's so far outside the law, particularly with respect to financial management. This is the question everybody has. Who's really running it? And unfortunately, if we're going to take the government data and create a government operating system under private corporate control, then the time has come to say, okay, who's really in charge? Because whoever is in charge, they are not following the Constitution and they are not following the law, and it's headed in the wrong direction. And if you add to that programmable money, then something's going to give. Now, I come back to what we've been telling everybody for many years, which is, use cash and stop banking or supporting with the people who are doing this. I dare say there are hundreds of people listening to this interview who are banking with banks that are members of the New York Fed and own the New York Fed and are implementing the Genius Act. Why are you banking with them? Why do you support them?
And you've got, so for people who go, oh, they haven't been following us, so they're new people following us, on Solari, you have an article about, all of this, how to get out.
So we have a great 4-part series that we did on financial rebellion, and it's up on Solari on how to find a good local bank.
Yeah, we did that.
Right.
We covered that. Right. And there's other things. So cash is king still. And just so that everybody know, I am in the last week or so, about 4 different companies have asked me for cash. I'll get a better deal for cash than if I was to use a card or something. So, and one was in England. So people really are still wanting cash and they're out there. So, because I've got a sister who continually says, no point bringing cash to England. No one's going to take it. She's wrong. Everybody took it. And so don't listen to people like her. Get out there, use the cash, because there's a lot of us out there doing that.
Right. If we take cash back, it makes an enormous difference. Enormous.
Yeah. And then there's the other group of people that go, oh, but Polly, it's money is so germy. I find that really interesting. Everything's germy if you're a germaphobe. Your phones are germy. Everything's germy. It's ridiculous.
So, but I don't you think part of it is they don't want to face where this is going?
Yeah.
And I think, I hate to keep bringing it back to the Epstein files, and I bring it back because if you look at what is happening politically, there is a drip, drip, drip that's happening about the Epstein files. And it wouldn't surprise me now that Trump has gotten a lot of the different pieces together for the control file, that there are a lot of people who'd like to see him gone. So this fight is not over, and it could get very, very dangerous. But the Epstein file, I mean, how does Mike Johnson, who is from Louisiana, go back and tell his church, his pastor, his congregation that he's protecting pedophiles? How does he do that?
I know. Can I just say also, so just so we go back to the list of things, please stop listening to mainstream media. I cannot believe how many of our viewers still listen to mainstream media. It is possibly the most dangerous thing you can do. It is so mind controlling, and the lies coming out of it is unbelievable. So mainstream media, turn it off. Catherine Carolyn.
So I just finished reading, I've been reading a lot, The Tech Exit, A Practical Guide to Freeing Kids and Teens from Smartphones. So this is somebody we have to get on Financial Rebellion. I don't know if you've seen this, but one of the things she does is she goes through, if you give your kids a smartphone, what they are exposed to. It is so frightening. It is unbelievable. And, I've read other books like this, but she does an update with the latest research. And, this is really frightening. So yeah, we definitely need to rebalance the analog in our life. And
I saw a child recently have one of the worst, it wasn't even a tantrum, it was almost like a psychotic fit when their tablet or whatever you call those things that they carry around to restaurants. I mean, these kids have them everywhere that they go, and the mother took it away, and it wasn't normal.
Right. Well, because you're talking about high tech. You're talking about technology which can create physical addictions.
Yeah.
And we had a viewer question about whether the stable coins whether you had to use a smartphone. Well, that is the preferred method of doing everything on your smartphone for a lot of particularly young people, but they're hackable. And so I have some issues with if you're doing transactions on a smartphone, which I would never do. I would never do banking transactions, but presumably they would be setting up systems to do stablecoin transactions from smartphones. And, how secure is that?
So I don't think we know, remember, the Genius Act has been passed. A lot of the depository institutions have been working on their plans for stablecoins, and we have stablecoins that are not issued under the Genius Act that are already in the marketplace. One of the big debates has been, and the Fed has been very clear, the Fed has been very clear, they will not allow. So if I get $1 in a stablecoin and I put it in treasury bills, I'm going to make interest. So the current stablecoin companies are making a fortune on the interest. And the question is, could the interest be shared with stablecoin holder? And the Fed has made it very clear it won't allow that. Okay, but we know the banks have been working on how they want to do stablecoins, and they've been working on the legislation, and they have all sorts of ideas about what they're going to do and how it's going to work. But I think this is very fluid, and it will take the regulations coming out, people, starting the subsidiaries, launching the stable coins, and market competition will evolve this. So we have no idea how this will go, other than what's in the act and what the Fed has said about what it wouldn't and would not permit.
And we know that the media and everything's going to hype this up. All those young people are going to think this is absolutely fantastic because they haven't done their research. We know that's about to happen. So I do think we need to keep talking about this, Catherine, and how.
Yeah. So let me just point out one thing. Think of a big wall and two sides. Over here is the digital concentration camp. Over here is the existing systems of small business and how they finance and transact. Small business and small farms. What I'm going to try and do is make the all digital ecosystem look very fashionable. So I'm going to do everything I can to shut down the businesses and the farms in this area, put them out of business, but get young people to start businesses in the digital concentration camp. Because if I shut these guys down, I can grab their equity. But if I have them start new businesses over here, then I can be using the digital technology to track, surveillance, skim their equity all along. So it optimizes my central ownership and control. So they keep saying, this is going to be very entrepreneurial. There are going to be no more jobs, but everybody can start businesses. Well, if they want people to start businesses, why are they doing everything to shut down and destroy the existing businesses and the existing small farms? It's because they want to consolidate ownership and then bring everybody up in the cryptocurrency prison system.
I wonder if we should get sort of like a young, 26, 7-year-old couple of people on to see what's in their mind, because they are so, I've spoken to some, they're just so brainwashed.
Some are, some aren't. I would like to say we have a couple on our team who I think are amazing and know exactly what's going on. You have this whole effort in the younger generation to walk away from this kind of technology.
I'm not talking about our viewers' children, by the way, everybody. I'm talking about, I can't really go into it, but I did meet a group of young people recently, and I was really shocked at just everything on their thinking. I mean, lovely people, but they just clearly watch whatever the mainstream media is. I don't know.
Right. Well, but the thinking is, oh, well, it's inevitable, so it doesn't matter. Just go with it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the same with the real ID, same with everything. And again, recently traveling, when I traveled up to DC, I know we've talked about this, but I was shocked how many, there's a big sign on each airport saying you can opt out. Yet nobody did. I was the only person that opted out. What is wrong with people? They just don't care, or what? Or they don't know. I mean, they can't say they don't know. It says you can opt out.
Go to Solari.com, put in mind control, bring up the mind control collection and start reading.
Yeah.
I'm serious. This is high-tech stuff. If you go back and study the history of technology and mind control, billions and billions of dollars is poured into getting people to go along with this.
To obey, which is what you get caught. That's what school, it starts in school. Like, I think these homeschoolers are fantastic. I'm totally anti-school now that because it's you will obey or you will be punished is basically what happens. And obey authority, or good people do that kind of stuff, and that's what got me in the mess I'm in now. So as far as I'm concerned, homeschool your children. Anyway, we're going way off subject and we're way over time. Catherine and Carolyn, as always, it's wonderful. Now, I do think it is Mel Nass next week and not us, but I can't.
Wonderful. Okay, so we all have to get, when you do this from us, from Financial Rebellion and our audience, would you thank her? Because her contribution to getting us out of the WHO and not adopting these amendments was extraordinary. Extraordinary. She did an extraordinary thing, and she was like in 37 countries in 4 weeks. I mean, she was lobbying.
She's amazing. And she is actually, breaking news, everyone, she is going to be doing a weekly segment on food and all kinds of things like that.
Wonderful.
Oh yeah, she's coming in. Well, she's coming back. You're going to see a lot of Dr. Meryl Naz.
Fabulous.
But I don't know if it's next week. I just have a feeling it's next week, but I always get it wrong. If it's not Meryl next week, we'll see you next week.
Okay.
So thank you.
But it's not us next week. It's the last week.
Oh, okay. So we're not on next week. Got it.
Yeah.
All right, everybody.
Okay.
Have a great rest of the day, and we'll speak to you soon. Okay, tell us your name.
Mark Salters.
And we interviewed your mum earlier.
Yeah.
And just talking about your sister and
Yeah,
what a
sister.
tragic thing that happened there. So you're totally unvaccinated?
Yeah, totally.
Not a thing?
No.
Okay, so how old you say 18?
Yeah,
About to be 19. How are you feeling?
Fine.
You're not dying?
No. I've competed in mixed martial arts and everything without vaccine. I've never suffered from any illnesses or never had anything really. Had a cold in winter, that's about it.
Do you have ear infections?
No.
Do you have eczema?
No.
Asthma?
No.
Panic attacks?
No.
Do you line things up in a line?
What do you mean?
I think that answers that one. Do you bang your head against the wall?
No.
Do you have a problem speaking?
No, don't think so.
Understanding people?
No.
Looking people in the eye?
No.
Do you have friends?
Yeah. I think so.
Have you ever got seriously ill?
No.
What happens when you get a cold?
I eat a few sodas and just lie in bed for a few days. And then
do what?
I eat a few soda sweets.
You eat some sugar sweets?
Yeah, and then lie in bed for a few
Yeah,
days and I'm alright.
he eats a couple of sugar sweets. I don't know if that's... He eats a couple of sugar sweets. We're not laughing at you, just laughing at the beauty of the unvaccinated. And then you get better.
Yeah, I lie in bed for 2 days and then I'm back on work then. Back training, doing the gym and all that.
Are you a happy person?
Yeah.
How do you feel about the vaccines hurting your sister?
When I was younger I didn't understand it. And then as I got older and I did understand it, it sort of... Not necessarily made me angry, but it sort of gave me a certain view towards things where I didn't like the way what they were doing to kids at the time. And you know, you've just got to change that.
What about all your friends? Are they vaccinated?
I don't think so. I think
you don't really have that conversation?
I think my best mate's not. I know that for certain he's not, and he's fine. He does the same as me. He does mixed martial arts and he plays football on a regular basis. He's the same. If he gets sick, he has 2 days in bed and then back to work. But that's it, really.
So can I give you some advice?
Yeah.
When you decide that you want to sort of like look for a wife,
Yeah.
can you make sure she has the same views as you? Because we're seeing lots of big fights going on between the two, okay? So
Yeah.
that's one. We don't care if she's rich, we don't care about anything else. All we care about is that she knows the dangers of vaccines too. Promise?
I promise.
Okay, tell me when he gets married. I have to come and inspect the wife.
I've heard that one before.
I'm so glad you're so healthy and well. And how are you at school?
I don't go work now.
Oh, you work now?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you do?
I work with my dad.
Oh, that's nice. Now tell me, you've got a daughter who's vaccine and injured. We've heard her story, and you've got this son who's unvaccinated and really supersonic healthy. Are you glad that you made the decision to stop vaccinating?
Yeah, of course. Of course. There was only one decision to make. It wasn't even a decision. It was just basically he wasn't having no vaccines. I never had them when I was a kid. I had the ones you have when you're a baby, and I'm not sick. I never got sick. They keep telling me.
Did you catch measles?
Yeah.
How was that for you?
That doesn't really...
You don't know because it wasn't really a big deal?
No. I know I got a couple of days off school because of it.
And in those days, we didn't get days off school, so it was really exciting to get the measles.
Yeah, of course it was, yeah.
You guys are amazing. I love your family. I'm so glad you're so healthy, and I'm so sorry for your sister and your daughter.
Thank you for that.
And so your grandchildren, will they be vaccinated?
No. I wouldn't have my kids vaccinated after knowing about it now.
Okay, trust me. Choose that wife carefully.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, you're amazing. Is that your sister? No. No. She's my milk camera. Okay, we're coming off. Say goodbye to everybody.
Bye.
The truth is, vaccine injuries are real and they've been ignored.
These childhood vaccinations, the people of America are telling us they are not safe and effective. We are seriously concerned at Children's Health Defense about the disinformation and misinformation out there.
Society does not want to acknowledge vaccine injury, period. My son's life has been ruined physically and emotionally, and he is persecuted for the mere fact that he exists.
After 8 years of litigation, HHS conceded by preponderance of the evidence that Chris died from her HPV vaccinations.
Parents deserve the truth. We deserve real informed consent, because no parent should have to live the nightmare I do.
I am heartbroken to hear these stories. And it makes me want to do something.
How about we ban pharmaceutical ads on TV?
I've advocated it, and you have a co-sponsor.
The government has decided that this particular industry doesn't have to be liable to anybody.
I am extremely suspicious, as a lawyer, of immunity that is granted in any blanket way across the board to any manufacturer or to anyone.
So if we're gonna do something, the North Star has gotta be medical freedom. I get to decide what's good for me and my family with proper information. And if I'm given improper information, just like in any other industry, there's gotta be accountability.
No more Pfizer-sponsored science. We need independent science.
I am competing against a pharmaceutical lobby of 1,600 lobbyists. That's 3 lobbyists for each member of Congress. This is insane.
Everybody sitting here, bar 2, vaccinated their families with catastrophic results. Over 12,000 signatures on those 2 buses of death, death, death. When will enough be enough? How many more buses? So this has to stop. And we implore you, please, to follow us at Children's Health Defense. At least break down the truth and get to the truth behind the science of what is really happening.